Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 20 things I learned in 2020. Before I get started, I'm just going to give you a few little updates. So you might be able to tell that I painted my room white. I personally didn't do it. We had a painter do it. We're done with the purple. The purple is a thing of the past. When we moved into this house, this room was already purple, so that's why it was that color. But I felt like white was much more in line with my aesthetic and just more sophisticated. So that's the color that I chose for my walls. Now they're different. I've also just finished my first graduate school semester, speech language pathology. So I am one semester down, 4 to go. So that's really exciting. And there's definitely more exciting things on the horizon. So stay tuned. So anyways, today I'm going to be talking about 20 things I learned in 2020. I feel like this has been such a tumultuous year and a lot of things have happened. One of the good things about going through difficult times or unexpected times is that it teaches you a lot of life lessons. So I came up with a list of 20 things that I learned this year, or that maybe they weren't necessarily new lessons for me, but that were kind of like reiterated, and I just thought I would share them with you with like a little explanation for each. So the first thing that I learned in 2020 is patience. I had to exercise my patience in a lot of different situations, as many of us have. I had to be patient when I was in Lebanon this past year, waiting to come home. I was so homesick, but the airport was closed. I had to be patient once I came back to the US, in that I had envisioned myself being done with long distance relationship with my husband, but we decided that it would be best if we went back to being long distance for the sake of my school and his school. So I had to be patient with that decision. I mean, it's difficult to be long distance from your husband's. I had to be patient also with just going back to school, because I didn't imagine that I would be going back to school this year. And it was a pretty last minute decision. I emailed the university in August, and that's when the decision was made. So it's hard being in school, you know? You have to be patient with a lot of things. You have to go through a lot to go through this kind of a program, like a grad school program. So that's another thing that I've had to be patient with this year. This year in general has just taught me the importance of patience and waiting. And another thing that 2020 has taught me, or has reiterated for me, is that whatever is meant for you will never miss you, and whatever is meant to reach you will reach you. There have been so many unexpected things this year, things that we could not have planned for, could not have imagined. So it really emphasized for me that, like, I am not the one in control, you know? Allah is the one who wills for things to occur, and we can plan as much as we want. We can hope for things to happen or for things not to happen as much as we want, but things happen the way that they're meant to happen, and things come to you when they're meant to come to you, and things don't come to you when they're meant not to come to you. So that has definitely been like reiterated for me this year with all of the unexpected things like COVID and me moving back to the United States and the airport being closed in Lebanon and just so many things. Another thing that I've learned this year, the third thing, is how much I and we collectively, like the people, my family, you know, you guys, how we as a society can adjust to so much. I've like realized that we can really like adjust and get used to so many different things. If you think about like all the things that we're now used to doing, like wearing a mask every day outside, social distancing, for me personally, like being apart from my husband, like you can get used to, you can adjust to almost anything. And it's just, this year has really taught me that we can put up with a lot, we can get used to a lot, and things that we would have never thought would have been commonplace or normal have now become normal because of this odd situation that we're in. This year has also taught me how to be a YouTuber. Prior to this year, I did have my YouTube channel. I started a year and a half ago, so the summer of 2019. I had no idea what I was doing. I made like a couple of videos, and then I didn't pick it back up until the fall of 2019, almost into 2020. And so most of my growth on YouTube, where I've learned, you know, how to film, how to edit, you know, like how to do things the way that I want them to be done on YouTube, has been this year. So I feel like this year has been the year that I've learned to be a YouTuber, and that I've, you know, I know what it takes now, what I have to do. You know, I'm constantly growing as a YouTuber too. Like there's so many things that I definitely could improve on, and I'm not like a profesh, but this year has been a year for me to really take command of this hobby. Another thing that I've learned this year in 2020 is how to be a grad student and how to be a clinician. Like that's what I'm learning to be. That's what I'm in school for. And I have learned how to do that. I mean, when you start your first semester, you have no idea what you're doing. So I feel like the biggest growth that you have as like a clinician in training is that first semester, because your skills start out at 0, and you go to, whatever point you're at by the end of the semester. So I feel like I've learned so much this year in an academic sense and in a professional sense. Another thing I've learned this year is how much I love my cat. I got her towards the end of 2019, in October 2019, and obviously I loved her at the time I got her, but I feel like I love her so much more now. Literally, she stays with me every single day while I'm in school, while I'm in my classes. She sits on my lap every day, and it's been like that since I got her, because when I was in Lebanon, I was also studying at home. Since I've been back in the US and she's been back here as well, she just sits with me every day. She's sitting here right next to me now. And I feel like she's like my daughter almost, as ridiculous as that may sound if you don't own a cat. But yeah, I feel like she's my child, and I worry about her when I'm not with her, and so I really do feel like she's a daughter in some ways. If I ever have to leave her, that makes me really sad. So I've learned how much I can love a cat. Another thing I've learned this year is how much I really enjoy being at home and working from home. My house and my room, they're really my happy place. That's the place that I love to be, and I'm so fortunate to have been able to do this first year of graduate school online, because it would have been me in person in DC, where my university is located. But we've been online. So I've been at home, and I really like working from home, and I can definitely see myself working from home in the future if that was ever an option for me, because I like being at home and I like not having to commute, and I like being able to wake up and have my little workspace in my house, and that being my thing. I really like that. So this year has definitely taught me how much I love being at home. I wouldn't want to stay home and do nothing, but staying home and getting work done at home, for me, it's been really satisfying and really nice. Another thing that I've learned this year is that it's okay for my goals, dreams, and choices to change. I think the way that I've been in the past is that I've always been very set on, I make a decision and I follow through. And that's a good way to be. You want to make choices and, set goals for yourself and follow through, right? But there are times when a change in those choices or dreams or goals is warranted, because you're either not passionate about it anymore, or there's some unforeseen difficulty that is overwhelming. And when that happens, it's okay. It's okay for your goals and your dreams to change. It's okay for you to have made a choice and then turn back on that choice. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you failure. And that's the way that I felt in the past, that if I made a decision and I didn't stick with it, that somehow meant I failed. I don't think that's true. I mean, it is something that I'm still learning, but it's something that I'm starting to see more and more, that if I make a decision and it doesn't work out, it's okay. And I need to kind of be kinder to myself and give myself the space that I need to kind of figure things out. So before last year, I was I had baby fever, I wanted to have kids, and now I'm in grad school. I wanted to live in Lebanon for 3 years, and then after 1 year, I moved here because I wanted to go to grad school. So it's okay for goals, dreams, desires to change, and that happens to me all the time now, and I don't pressure myself into sticking with something if it's not what I feel like is right in the moment. And honestly, who knows what's next in terms of changing goals and choices. Another thing that I learned this year is that I'm more indecisive than I thought. And I'm starting to embrace it a little bit more, but I thought that when I made choices and decisions that I just, at that point, I would just stick with it. But sometimes that's not the case. Okay, another thing that I've learned this year is that learning doesn't really stop. I used to think that we would get to a point in our life where, we had the knowledge that we were studying for, and we had a job and we were adults, and that was it. And I never thought of learning as a lifelong process, but it really is, and it should be. The knowledge that you gain in school, or that you gain, at your mosque, or wherever you're gaining knowledge in whatever aspect of your life, if you don't practice it and you don't keep it up and you don't keep reviewing, then you're gonna forget it and you're gonna lose it. One thing that I've learned this year, or that has been reiterated for me, is that learning is an ongoing process, and I'm never gonna reach a point in my life where I'm done with all of my learning and I'm, ready to be an adult. I'm always going to have to review whatever knowledge I've learned, whether that be in school or religious knowledge or what have you, and that's okay, and that's the way it should be. I should always be in that mind frame of I'm trying to improve myself. I'm trying to learn more. No matter how old I am, no matter what stage of my life I'm in, it's okay to keep learning. It's okay to keep reviewing. It's natural to forget things, and if we are learning information that we find essential for whatever reason, we should take the initiative to review. And that doesn't mean that if you learn a chapter of Quran and you have to constantly review it, that you're a bad student. It just means that you're diligent. Another thing that I learned this year is Arabic. So I was in Lebanon at the beginning of this year, and while I was there, I was taking Arabic classes. So my Arabic grew leaps and bounds. I went from not knowing how to speak at all, barely being able to read and write. Like, I could read and write, but it was pretty choppy and slow, to being able to read and write fluidly and, being able to hold a fairly basic conversation, which, I may have forgotten some of those words and some of those skills now. Hopefully with review, I can keep them up. Another thing I learned this year is ASL, a different language, American Sign Language. So this past fall, I was taking an ASL class, and it's a language that I learned when I was in high school. I took a couple classes in high school, but I'm relearning that knowledge and hopefully going to build upon it. So yeah, that's something else I've learned this year. So 2 new languages. Another thing I've learned this year is to show appreciation and love for the people around me, and how important that is for my relationships with other people. Showing the people that I love how much I appreciate them is really the key for building relationships. There are definitely going to be times when I might have to sacrifice work, or I might have to sacrifice, achievement or productivity to kind of be there for my friends, or to be kind to my friends, or spend time with my friends, or buy my friends something, or, do something nice for friends. That's kind of part of being in meaningful friendships and for having meaningful relationships, is doing those things, sacrificing time, money, achievement, whatever, to do for others what you would want to be done for you, and to be kind to others. And that's really important to building relationships. Another thing I've learned this year is that the people around you say a lot about you. In other words, choose your friends wisely. This is something I've known for a while, but I've just kind of seen it again in that, you might like somebody on an individual level. Like, you might enjoy having conversations with them. You might, like the way that they are one-on-one with you. But if a person is surrounding themselves by people who aren't really good people, or who aren't the best people, who aren't people who, they could do better, in other words, then you don't want to be influenced by that. So you want to really be careful in who you surround yourself with, and who the people you surround yourself with surround themselves with, because that will have an effect on you. Another thing that I've learned this year is that a response is not always necessary. I'm the type of person who, I hate ignoring people. I try not to do it because I hate it when people do it to me. But something I'm realizing this year is that you don't always have to respond to a person for one reason or another. So like in YouTube comments, for example, I do try my best to answer them all because my channel is fairly small and I have the capability to do that right now. There are times when somebody comes into my comments on YouTube and starts trying to have a debate with me, like a religious debate, or just says something rude or whatever, and I always have the impulse to respond and to be like, no, like, you're wrong. But the reality is that I didn't make my YouTube channel to have religious debates with people. I made my YouTube channel to inspire people to be better Muslims, and to have a presence on YouTube that focuses on that, because I feel like so much of what YouTube is kind of takes us away from that, or de-emphasizes, our faith or our religion. And I want to have a space on YouTube where that is the emphasis, our Islam, and how that fits into our lifestyle. So that's why I made my YouTube channel. I didn't make it to have religious debates with people. If somebody comments on one of my YouTube videos and it's something that I feel like I can respond to, I will. But sometimes I just feel like there's no point, because a person here is just coming to pick a fight. So that's an example where I feel like a response is not necessary, and I might even delete the comment. That goes for, text message too. YouTube comments just happen to be like where I've applied this for the most part this year. But if somebody is messaging you and they're a toxic person and you don't want to deal with them, don't deal with them, Just, if that's going to be too much for your plate, if it's too stressful to deal with this person, just don't respond. And sometimes you just have to be that way. And it's difficult for me to say that because I hate being ignored myself, and I understand being ignored can be very frustrating. But if you're really close with somebody, if somebody really loves you, they're not going to ignore you. So I'm not advocating for people to ignore other people and to just not respond. But sometimes for your own mental health, for your own sake, just not responding is the way to go. And you don't always have to come out on top or to respond so that you can be right or whatever. Sometimes it's just best to leave things alone. Another thing that I've learned this year is that being a student really isn't everything. I used to put a lot, I mean, I say used to, but I still do. I put a lot of value in how I do academically or how I do in terms of my work. And something that I try to remind myself of and have been trying to this year as well, especially starting in on grad school and it being a really difficult experience, is that being the best student or being whatever is not everything. And that, you know, I'm much more defined by the quality of my relationships and the strength of my iman and other factors more so than my academic success. And yes, I'm still always going to try to be the best student I can be. But when I do try my very best and it's just not, you know, cutting it, so to speak, or it's just not recognized or whatever, it's okay. And that we don't want to live to work, we want to work to live. It's more important for me to take care of myself than to be the best in whatever I'm doing, work related or education related. Hey guys, so this is editing Najia here. So I realized when I was editing this video, I forgot to mention one thing that I learned in 2020 that was on my list. I totally forgot to talk about it. And then another thing that I had on my list was kind of a repeat of a previous item. So the first thing is the thing I forgot to talk about. So the thing I forgot to mention was I learned how to be long distance again, like in a long distance relationship again. I talked about having to be patient with that and stuff like that, but I also had to relearn to be in that kind of a relationship and, you know, what it entails in terms of like conversations, in terms of, you know, compromise, in terms of whatever. It's a different way of being in a relationship, and I kind of had to relearn that towards the end of this year when I moved back to the US. So that is one thing. And then another thing that I learned this year is that happiness really comes from within. And I know that's pretty cliche, but it actually is something that I learned that I had to apply in my own life, because like it's very easy to think when you're in like a somewhat difficult situation that if you just change this one thing, then you'll be happy. And that is sometimes the case. If it can improve your quality of life, it might make you happier in the moment. But, you know, the joy of having luxuries or the joy of having, you know, whatever comfort is not long lasting. It's like in the beginning, it's like really great and you get really excited and it's very like makes you happy, but that happiness fades. And really what determines happiness is how you feel on the inside and how you are on the inside and how you view life in general from the inside out. That's really what determines happiness. And something that I learned is that like small changes in life or like, you know, luxuries or whatever, those are not the things that are going to make you happy. And of course, again, this is something I've kind of always known, but it's just something that was reiterated for me, something that I encountered again this year with the various life changes that I had. And the last thing that I've learned this year is to let go and go with the flow. I mean, with all the unexpected things that have happened this year, if you don't go with the flow, you're going to have a really tough time. So that's something that I've learned, and to expect the unexpected. Like, yeah, it's been a rough year, you guys, and we've made it. We're basically at the end of this year. Hopefully next year is looking up. Something I've just learned is that, you know, I might make all the plans in the world. I might, you know, have a certain idea of how my life is gonna go, or have a certain idea of how things are gonna go in life, and I'm not the one in control. So something I've learned this year is to let go with the flow, and expect the unexpected. Anyways, that is my video. This has been kind of a long one, a bit longer than I expected. But let me know in the comments below if you can relate to any of these, if these life lessons that I spoke about are also something that you've learned this year, something that has been reiterated for you. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're not already, and I will see you guys in next week's video, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Bye!